Hello.
You hear me?
Good to see you again.
Here, good to see you, sir. How have you been?
Oh, everything is fine. Everything is okay.
Dear.
Not a worry in the world. So what can I do for you?
I I can say I'm doing really well. Uh, it's yeah.
Well,
I mean, every
that's
day
good to hear.
is
That's
better,
good to hear.
better. Yeah. It's you've given me. Sometimes I think you've given me everything I needed already. It really is. It's been very helpful. Uh, I'm seeing exactly where I need to look, what I need to look at, how I need to look at it, what to do with it. It's all a lot of sense. Very nice. I suppose I can summarize kind of what I've been dealing with as uh, this is the fallout of never having been loved, uh,
Ever having been what?
going back to when I was a child, not having been loved, not being loved by my parents when I was a child, and having very few friends and everything through all those kinds of social situations and uh, yeah, and then seeing now how that manifests in
Well, you can have lots
her
of
and,
friends
and
now. You're
insecurity.
you're a big guy now. You can have all the friends.
Oh, and that's the thing is I'm finding I'm okay whether I have them or not.
I didn't catch that. You're having what or not?
That's like I said, I'm okay. The connection is not very good. It's probably uh, everyone tries the internet around this time here.
Okay. I having a little trouble understanding you. The microphone today seems to be muffled, would be the word for it.
Yeah, I think it's the internet connection here because around this time everybody's everybody's trying to call
It-
over to Cambodia, and it's
yes, this would be just in general in the U.S. This would be the time to call, but this would also be a time for the what folks to call Cambodia. Opportune time because everybody's using it as not so opportune.
yeah, the problem is
So anyway, I'm glad that you've gotten the point about the Eightfold Noble Path. That for some reason there are so many millions of Buddhists that just don't get the real teaching of the Buddha. And the real teaching of the Buddha is the Four Noble
yeah,
Truths,
it's
most specifically the Eightfold Noble Path.
yeah, yeah, and it's like I hear monks talking about the Dhamma, and they very rarely talk about the Eightfold Path, and I've always wondered why that is. never been able to get a good answer about it either.
I think that it may be because people consider the Eightfold Noble Path sort of kindergarten Buddhism, and they're looking for PhDs. But the point in mathematics is that PhDs can't. They work a lot with symbols, but if they don't have numbers in there, their symbols don't mean anything. And so back to the basics, back to the numbers. Remember, sati, to look, ditti, and to make a change, right noble effort. This is the 1, 2, 3 of Buddhism. We have to apply it on an hourly, moment by moment basis. To look at those thoughts, make a change. And if you can do that, you've got everything that you need out of the teaching of the Buddha. So we change thoughts of selfishness into thoughts of non-selfishness. We change the thoughts of greed into thoughts of altruism. We change the thoughts of fear into thoughts of accomplishment and power. Any thoughts that we have can be changed to something better. And that's really all the teachings are. And it's funny also, in a way, that so many teachers want to find something new to teach.
That's the one that gets me. Is yeah, the Buddha warned about that. He said you can't add anything to the Dhamma, you can't take anything away from it. It just is what it is. It's all it needs to be.
Mm-hmm. Well, people have been adding a lot. I mean, have you seen the size of the Tripitaka?
I have indeed. Yes. Yeah, it's quite substantial.
Mm-hmm.
I'm grateful that it's all there. It all is seems to be. I found very little in the Tipitaka that I can. There are a couple things that seem to be added on later that are. They're pointed out usually by the commentator. It's the commentaries and the sub commentaries and I think even the Abhidhamma was the last addition to the Tipitaka, and sometimes I wonder if that hasn't kind of misdirected people away from the message of the suttas, or maybe they've misunderstood it from there. I know in my experience, I've encountered some people who feel like because it's the Abhidhamma, the greater Dhamma, the higher Dhamma, that means it's better in some way, but it's just a distillation. It's the same thing, just
Actually, we would be very lucky if it
down
were
to
the
it's
same thing.
Yeah, I have my contentions about it. I didn't learn anything about it until I'd already been meditating and reading the suttas for well over a year, and I did just fine.
Well, for one thing, we don't have adequate translations of the Abhidhamma. In fact, the only translation into English that I know of is with the Polytext Society. and they are the number one top worst translation of any of the Buddhist Tripitaka.
It's yeah, it's all Christian language, and it's very stilted and very yeah. I mean, the fact that they did the work of making it available is good, but we need a new translation convention around a lot of the Bali.
Well, Bhikkhu Buddhadasa has said of both the Abhidhamma and the Visuddhimagga that they both could be thrown in the ocean, and that the teachings of the Buddha would be better.
Ah, wow. That's yeah, thank you for saying it. I have to be careful because there's, the monks around here they're very dedicated to learning the Abhidhamma, and I they don't like to hear it when I bring my doubts to bear on it.
Well,
Especially the Visuddhimagga, that one in particular.
in a way, the human mind is like our hands. We need to put handles on things so that we can carry them around. And at the same time, if we have our hands full, we're likely going to drop something. And so if you've got car keys and your wallet and your cell phone and your passport, etc., in your hands, the likelihood is that you're going to drop one of them. And so when you've got Abhidhamma and Visuddhimagga on mind, you're more than likely going to drop suttas.
Yeah. Well, and then the contortions that people go through, and they look at and they try to see, is this chitta, is it rooted in dosa? That means it's this. That means it's like, no, just, is it dukkha? Does it feel good? Stop doing it. If it's dukkha, you don't need to like try to pigeonhole it
Analyze it.
into a category.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yes, in
yeah,
fact, the
yeah.
Abhidhamma probably fits in that realm exactly the same way that the Westerners are practicing the Mahasi method, which, by the way, is rooted in the Visuddhimagga.
It's the same thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Have I told you my little story about that? I probably have
Maybe.
already. Yeah. You're walking down the sidewalk and there is a dog pile
Oh,
about 10 feet ahead of you. Okay, well, the
and you get real
Abhidhamma is
interested in
taking
it.
that dog pile into the kitchen, slicing it, dicing it, powdering, mixing it with onions, and that's what they're doing. They're taking the dukkha and they're just mincing it all up and putting a lot of powder on it and frying it up and all of that kind of stuff. To where the Buddha recommends right there in Sutta number 117, the Great 40, he recommends to remove those unwholesome thoughts and put wholesome thoughts in the mind.
Yeah, there's
Don't
there
have
are
to
a couple
in
other
that.
suttas.
Hmm?
Oh, there are a couple other. There's the two kinds of thinking in the Majjhima Nikaya, where he gives a
Yes,
list
that's
of
number
recommendations for
19.
when you see something in your mind. 19, yep, that's the one of how to get that stuff out. And then I can't think of which one it is, but he says that you should react to something unskillful in your mind as if your hair's on fire. Get it out.
Hmm. I think that's in the Samyutta Nikaya, which is later literature.
Yeah,
In
and that's sounds about right. I notice all the suttas you've mentioned that I've heard anyways all come from the Majjhima. I don't think I've heard you refer to any other Nikaya, which I don't blame you at all. The Majjhima is my personal favorite, but
I
is
would
there a reason you
say
have the preference?
yes, I would say that in fact that I would stay with the Udana, the Sutta Nipata, and the Majjhima Nikaya.
These are
Those are
actually
the
the exact
three.
three I'm reading right now. I just finished the Sutta Nipata recently, started the Udana, reading through the Majjhima, and again, I want to read the whole thing cover to cover. I've read most of it,
Hmm.
but not all of it.
Yeah, the Udana and the Sutta Nipata are known both in context and in style, as well as deeper research, that this is the oldest stuff that in fact is most likely that they were written, at least memorized, but probably written down in the lifetime of the Buddha, as well as the Gita and the Tara Gita and Teri Gita. Those were written down
Yeah.
in the time of the Buddha, and that the Majjhima Nikaya kind of closed the book because that was done the year after the Buddha died.
Okay.
Interesting things like the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, that's in the Dhamma Nikaya, actually most of that stuff was taken out of the Udana.
Anyway, I did not know that. Actually, the Digha is the one I've read the least of. I've maybe a handful of suttas out of it.
The Udana is where Bhikkhu Buddhadasa found and pointed out that the the Paticca Samuppada was what the Buddha was doing during that 6-week period after his friends left him.
Hmm.
That he was figuring out actually how the mind worked.
Yes, yes. That's a to imagine that, looking in your mind, seeing birth and death, and asking what lies on either side of them, and then figuring it all out from there.
Well, it's funny how many people want to believe all kinds of things that the Buddha didn't teach. Rebirth and reincarnation, he didn't teach that. That in fact,
Oh,
the
no, I did not.
English language translations, um, they all will translate jati as rebirth, where it doesn't
It's just
translate
birth.
well to it's just birth. And what he
Yeah.
means
Actually,
is the
there's
birth of the self, the birth of the blues, the birth of this moment.
yeah, this that's happening right now. This is it.
Hmm.
And it was one of John Buddhadasa's a transcribed talk of his that I read, where he said exactly that the Buddha didn't teach rebirth. He just taught that moment by moment there's birth happening, and you see that.
Hmm.
And that was actually yeah, that was, I still remember that of all the things I've read, that one sticks out. That one really struck me.
I think part of the problem that many people have had in, let us say, more recent centuries, there is a tanka of the Paticca Samuppada on a wheel being held up by a bear. He's got his teeth on the top of it and his paws around it, and he's holding it. And step 11 there, no, 10, is a picture of a pregnant woman
Yeah. Yep.
signaling
Literal physical
Bhawan,
birth.
or process, the Bhavana, the becoming. And having a pregnant woman pregnant, that's kind of a metaphor, but it's so far off that people really get confused thinking that there is actually a pregnant woman, where in fact the pregnancy is in the mind.
Hmm. Yeah, well, it's the same issue where people think samsara is a place. Samsara is not a place. It's the activity in your mind.
Actually, it's the circles.
It's a
Everything is in cycles. When we say in Nietzsche, we're actually talking about everything is in a cycle.
Mhm.
For instance, there is a cycle between oxygen and hydrogen. They come together, they fall apart, They mix with other things. Sometimes you've got oxygen by itself. Sometimes you've got O3. Sometimes you've got O2. And then it goes back with water as hydrogen. And so all that there's the number of things that can be happening are few, and they run around in circles in one another. And that's the everything is in cycles. Some cycles take centuries.
Yeah, it all just comes back to itself.
Hmm.
It doesn't go anywhere. It never really moves from where it is.
Well, spinning in circles, but not. Actually, you could even say, in that regard, is a spiral, like a slinky toy.
I always
And the
whenever
slinkiness is going off into the future while things are just spinning around as it goes.
I visualize or always see dependent origination as like it's a spiral, but if you imagine a spiral expanding from a center in all directions, it's like if you try to point in which way is time moving, time seems to just be expanding out from the center. I guess
Hmm.
you could say it's coming inward either way. It's kind of the same, but even Einstein said that, I believe it was him, that the difference between past, present, and future is just an illusion. I think that's really what dependent origination is saying at its core, is that you can't say that the past or the future exists. You really can't say anything exists. You can only define it, describe it based on its observable condition. And then when that condition
Right.
changes and the thing
But
goes
the only
away,
time that you can observe
not
it
having
is
it,
right now. So there's a
right
difference
when it's
between
arising.
present. Hmm. There's a big difference between present in the regard of past, present, and future, and that none of that exists. The only thing that really exists is right now.
And that's where the past and the future, if you think about those things, that's where they are.
That's right. All the past is just right here. All the future is just right here.
If I can dare to overreach, I had this understanding that hit me that was very, it was something. It was because if you look in the Majjhima 9, the Summa, I believe it's in that one. It might be another sutta where dependent origination, it's given that Namarupa arises dependent on Vijnana, Vijnana arises dependent on Namarupa. They go back and forth. They feed back into each other.
Hmm.
And it it hit me that, and it seems so simple because it's like something I've known, but all of a sudden it just became real, that in any moment, all it is it's this instance of Vijnana arising. There is no, the Vijnana that thinks of something now is not the Vijnana that experiences it in the future. It's it's a totally separate experience. And the upadana, the ignorance, all that in the mind is what says, no, this is me experiencing it now, and I'm going to experience it in the future. And that's the whole delusion. That's the whole confusion.
Hmm.
On some level, I have to keep coming back to that because it keeps solidifying into, I'm thinking about this, and I'll be the one that experiences it when it happens. And
Hmm.
come back to, no, 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 that's not it.
Well, we keep coming back then at the basis of that is the Eightfold Noble Path of making a change,
Mhm.
of seeing where we go off in that direction or this direction here, looking off into the past, inventing fancy dhammas. And it's all really very simple. Just to remember
I said
that you got a choice.
the other thing that was quite striking about that realization was in it, and like, was this recognition that, so why would I ever be afraid of death? Why would I ever want anything if what's thinking about it now is not what's experiencing it? If there's no continuity, then what's the big deal? And it's that I feel like in that understanding, when that really locks in, then you've got it.
Mm-hmm.
As long as it keeps getting away. Rather, it's not that that's going away, it's the ignorance that's clouding it out again, obscuring it.
Yes, death and funerals and dying and morgues and ways to go and all of that kind of stuff. When someone has recently had a parent or someone close to them die, I often play with it to get them out of their grief and thinking about how terrible death is, to where, nope, it's just a racket. The morticians have a racket, the doctors have a racket, the undertakers have a racket.
Oh, they sure do. Yeah, they're making a killing.
And they're making a feeling because you feel making killing because you feel bad. If you don't feel bad, they're not going to make so much money.
Yeah, they got to play it up. Get the sad obituary and bring your friends and your family and everybody sob it up together. Yeah.
And if
It's
you're Irish, you got to get drunker than you
well,
can
and
stand.
being at the temple here. Uh, yeah, no, thank you. Um, but
And
being
so,
at the temple here, a lot of times, the only time that I see people is when somebody's died, and people come out then to make their merit and dedicate it, and then we don't see them again until somebody else dies. In fact, I wonder this isn't a
I
sustainable
have a
model either.
story about that too. Yes. There was one, by the way, they were Cambodian. A Cambodian family had some old croaker die, and all of the grandsons, and there was a crowd of them, from one that was nearly 20 years old but still under 20, all the way down to about 6 or 7. I think that there were nearly a dozen of them. And for some reason, their family wanted them to ordain and stay ordained a whole week. And so they ordained on Friday.
Mm.
The services were done on, and cremation was done on Saturday. And then they disrobed the next following Saturday, and they were all there at the Wat. And so my idea was to teach them the Dhamma, and Mahasamsak's idea was to put them to work. And so we did those two things. And so for a while, I taught them the Dhamma, and for a while, they cleaned up the place, fixed it up. And so that was their week. Guess what? After that, we never saw any of those guys again.
Yeah, I bet you didn't. Oh, yeah, we've had people do that. They'll ordain their children, their grandchildren. Sometimes even I've seen, I think, like adult children, people in their 30s, 40s, they'll ordain for a weekend, usually just a few days. And I started to notice that, one of the other monks here will take them and they'll meditate a little bit in the morning, but most of the time they're just sitting around, don't know what to do. And so if they speak English, I'll take the time to teach them the Dhamma. And I think maybe it's just because they're bored out of their minds otherwise, but they've been very appreciative of what I've had to say, and um, even practicing meditation. I think for a lot of them, they didn't realize it's something that they could do, that it is accessible, and that it is kind of a good thing.
In a way, meditation is best defined as the practice and eventually the art of stopping of everything that you're
Yeah,
doing.
exactly.
Just
It's like
stop.
Angulimala.
Hmm.
But I asked him, when are you going to stop? That's
I s-
exactly it.
I have stopped, Angulimala. You stop too. Just stop.
Oh, yeah. And it just get tired of it within myself. It's like, yeah, when am I going to stop? When is it enough? How much
Well,
do I
when
have to
are you?
suffer?
Right now.
How much pain?
What is this when?
Right.
That's past and future stuff.
When?
When is
Right
right
now. Do it
now.
right
That's the
now.
only time there is
Exactly.
when is right now.
Yeah. And so here it is. What is it? Interesting. Uh, and you got to get quiet. You gotta like, it's funny how it's the thing in the back of the mind that's creating all this is so obnoxious. And then when you look for it, it gets real quiet and doesn't want to show itself. And then I've started to figure this out too, that it's the thing that's looking. That's the problem, is the thing that is looking for it. It's like a dog chasing its tail.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's
Yes,
if you stop and you look at where is this coming from, and then you start to get a sense of what's going on.
exactly. That in the beginning, people just have thoughts, random thoughts, monkey mind thoughts, unwholesome thoughts. And then they have those thoughts often enough, they start to talk about it. And then they'll have them, those unwholesome thoughts long enough to start acting on them, building up habits, and that
Oh,
becomes their destiny.
oh,
So,
oh, yeah,
um,
scary stuff.
if we can remember that we have a choice when we're having those thoughts, that we have a choice about what thoughts we're going to have. We can't change our destiny directly, but we can certainly change the thoughts that give rise to our actions. And if we have thoughts of stopping right now and continue to have thoughts of stopping, pretty soon our actions will stop. You know, the Buddha talked about four kinds of karma, and the fourth kind of karma was neither good nor bad, neither bright nor dark, but it brings the end of action.
Way out, yeah.
The action that brings the end of action.
What an interesting idea.
Well, he's famous
There's
for
but
it.
maybe you can help me. Uh, I've been trying to figure out, been trying to find it, or I think about it once in a while. It's one of the verses where the Buddha described his experience of awakening, and he said it wasn't by pushing forward, and it wasn't by staying still. When I pushed forward, I was whirled about or swept away. When I stayed still, I sank. And so, by neither pushing forward nor by staying still, did I cross the flood.
Hmm.
And he leaves it at that.
Which would be
So,
another word of saying
oh,
relax. Just relax.
mhm.
Because um, here's a way of looking at it. A car can either you have the gas pedal on, going forward, accelerating, or you can have the foot on the brake, stopping it. This is what he's talking about. And the third option is take your foot off the accelerator and off the brake and just let it coast to a stop.
It's the hardest thing in the world to do because it's not doing.
Well, it's non doing, exactly.
Exactly it. Yeah, and the mind wants to do something. That's the trap. That's the whole
Well,
problem.
that's the habit.
It's like that's the habit, that keeps arising. That like in meditation, when things get nice and quiet and you're in a good spot, the first thing that happens is, now what do I do? Nothing. What do you mean?
Enjoy the nothing.
We're
That's what
here.
you do. Yeah, oh, this is nice. Nowhere to go and nothing to do, and the spring comes and the grass grows all by itself, according to Japanese haiku, bushu. So just sit there, nowhere to go and nothing to do. So the stopping is what we begin to practice in the beginning. Like Angulimala, that was the first thing he said to Angulimala. And so stop. And once we start, when we take our foot off the accelerator and start putting it on the brake, pretty soon we realize we don't have to put the brakes on either. But the best thing to do is just stop by not accelerating, not doing. Because stopping in that
Of
regard
course.
is an active job to do.
Yeah, you gotta the effort that leads to the end of effort, karma that leads to the end of karma. Yeah.
Hmm.
And if people will hear that and they think, I've heard this, that, they think nibbana is just nothing, or like, then you turn into a robot. You just have no thoughts, no emotions. And it's like, no, you come alive more than ever. You you reach a place that is.
Here's something that you might want to use for the issue of nibbana. Imagine a car that's been out on the road, been traveling here and there and yon, going to the truck, going to the store, going to the repair shop, going to the bank, etc., like that. When it comes home, it was building up heat all of that time. And when the car comes home, you turn the engine off, the tires are still hot, the radiator's hot, the engine's hot, the exhaust is still hot, even after you turn it off. But if you leave it off, it'll cool off. That's nibbana, is the cooling off that we do after we stop. After we come to a rest, then things will cool off.
I want to be very careful because I don't want to misunderstand.
The what?
When it comes to talking about nibbana, it's make sure that we're getting it. Because you say you stop and it cools off. You stop and it cools off. Yeah.
Because there's no more friction. When we're stopping, there's a lot of friction, especially in the brakes. They get hot. But if you just roll to a stop, then everything just cools off.
Uh, I want to say more, but I don't want to talk about nibbana. I feel like it's too delicate a subject.
You're well, the subject is not delicate. It's the mind of the people who don't want to hear it, how easy it is. It's not delicate.
Right. Well, and even to, because you've put it in a way that is, I think, that's very easy to understand and accurate to what it is, and to say more than that is to complicate it, and that's, nibbana is the simplest thing there is. That's what makes it difficult. Uh,
Well, this has been great. Why don't we bring this talk to a close? I've really enjoyed it, Ben. Thanks so much for calling again. And it looks like that you're moving along just fine towards that stopping.
yeah, I'm not worried. I'm not terribly worried.
That's great. Isn't that marvelous? Wow, what a relief it is from the last two times that you called, especially the first time.
Mhm.
What a relief
Oh
it
yeah,
is.
well, we all
Well,
need
what a
help
relief.
sometimes, and I'm I'm so glad you're here to provide it. I can't even imagine how many people you've helped. You're an inspiration.
I mean, just having fun.
Exactly. It's got to be fun. If it's not fun, it's terrible.
All right, well, we'll see
Well,
ya.
thank you very much. Yes, sir. Have a good day.